We are absolutely swimming in data these days, right? It feels like we have more information at our fingertips than ever before. But are we actually any wiser? Today, we are going to dive headfirst into the modern charlatan's playbook. We're going to look at how data that looks scientific can be twisted to sell us ideas that are not just false, but sometimes downright dangerous. And by the end, we're going to have a toolkit to spot them.
This really gets to the heart of our defense strategy. See, instead of trying to find more fancy tools or pile on even more data, real wisdom, especially in a world this noisy, actually comes from subtraction. It's all about knowing what to ignore, what to tune out, and what to avoid.
So what exactly are we up against? Well, let's call it snake oil data. Think of it as the 21st century version of that old-timey salesman selling miracle cures from a rickety cart. It looks legit, you know? It uses fancy charts, big statistics, but its real purpose, its core design, is to fool you. All right, let's meet the person behind the curtain. And you can forget the horse and wagon. Today's Dr. Charlatan has a much more powerful set of tools. The scale has just exploded. I mean, the old charlatan had to physically pack up his cart and get to the next town before people figured him out. The new charlatan? All they need is a spreadsheet and a social media account, and they can blast a false narrative to millions of people before anyone even has a chance to blink, let alone fact-check. That speed and that reach, it makes them infinitely more dangerous. So how in the world do we fight back? Well, it's not with a more complicated algorithm. It's with a simpler and honestly a much more powerful idea. It's called via negativa, which is just a fancy way of saying the path of subtraction. It's about building up our resilience by focusing on what to get rid of and what to avoid. This slide right here highlights such a crucial idea. A lot of us think the goal is to be robust, like a stone pyramid that just withstands pressure. But that's not really enough in today's world. The real goal is to become anti-fragile. Think about our immune system. It doesn't just resist viruses, it learns from them. It gets stronger. That is the mindset we need to build. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. It's time to open up this charlatan's playbook. Because once you understand the tricks, they lose all their power. We're going to look at 3 of the most common ways our brains get completely fooled by numbers. All right, trick number 1, exploiting our just awful intuition for probability. Look at this question. You've got a highly accurate test for a very rare disease. You take the test, and it comes back positive. Now, your gut instinct, what does it tell you? You probably think there's a 90% chance you have it, right? I mean, that's what most people think. Even doctors get this wrong. But it is dead wrong. And this just shows the trap perfectly. The actual probability is less than 10%. So why? How can that be? It's because the disease is so incredibly rare. Let's just think about it with 1,000 people. Only 10 of them actually have the disease. Now, that 90% accurate test, it will correctly spot 9 of those 10 sick people. But it will also generate about 100 false positives from the 990 people who are perfectly healthy. So when you get a positive test, you're in a group of about 109 people, and only 9 of you are actually sick. See? Charlatans love to flash these big, impressive accuracy numbers while conveniently hiding that very low base rate. Okay, the second trick is a bit more abstract, but it's huge. It's all about applying the rules of one world to a completely different one. The source material calls these 2 different worlds mediocristan and extremistan. And you have to understand they operate under fundamentally different laws of data. This table breaks it down so well. In mediocristan, things tend to cluster right around the average. Think about human height. If you add the tallest person in the world to a room of 100 people, the average height barely moves. But in extremistan, a single event, a single data point, can change absolutely everything. Think about wealth. If a billionaire walks into that same room, the average wealth becomes a totally meaningless, useless number. Charlatans make a living by applying the nice, predictable logic of mediocristan to the wild, unpredictable world of extremistan. And our final trick is one of the most subtle, and honestly, one of the most powerful. It's about creating a totally misleading trend just by lumping different groups of people together. It's a phenomenon known as Simpson's paradox, where the data tells you one story when you look at the whole picture, but it tells you the complete opposite story when you look at the subgroups. This is a perfect, real-world example of what I'm talking about. A charlatan might show you a chart where more vaccinated people end up in the hospital and then claim the vaccine doesn't work. But they are hiding the most important piece of context. The vast majority of older, high-risk people are vaccinated, and the majority of younger, low-risk people are not. Because age is such a massive factor in hospitalizations, when you combine these groups, it makes the vaccine look bad. But when you separate the data out by age group, the conclusion completely flips on its head. In every single age bracket, the vaccine drastically reduces the risk. It's a classic trick.
So this is the crucial part. Now that we know the tricks, how do we actually use this knowledge to navigate the real world, to make better decisions for ourselves and for the people around us?
First things first, we have to understand that we are often playing two completely different games. One is called science. The other is called risk management. The goal of science is to establish what is true, and to do that, it requires positive, verifiable evidence. But risk management? Its goal is simply survival. It's about avoiding total ruin, and that sometimes means you have to act based on precaution, even when you don't have perfect evidence.
I mean, this just makes it so clear, doesn't it? You don't wait for a peer-reviewed study on gravitational acceleration to decide not to step off a cliff. Why? Because the potential cost of being wrong is catastrophic. It's irreversible. This is the precautionary principle in a nutshell. When the downside is that bad, the burden of proof totally shifts. You don't need proof that something is dangerous to avoid it. You actually need proof that it's safe to engage with it. So this all boils down to a simple but really powerful 3-step guide for survival. First, you identify the potential for irreversible ruin. Could this go catastrophically wrong? Second, you ask yourself, what's the cost of taking a simple precaution? And third, if the cost of that precaution is low and the potential for ruin is high, you act. You don't need perfect certainty to survive.
And that leaves us with a final thought, a way to totally reframe how we approach information. True intelligence in our incredibly complex world, it might not be about how many facts you can accumulate or how certain you are. It might actually be about cultivating humility, about deeply understanding the limits of what we know, and about always asking, where are my blind spots? What if I'm wrong about this? That simple question, that's our most powerful shield against the snake oil of our time.